Hey everyone, this is Joseph with 3D Sorcerer. Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to design a universal self-centering filament roller. You see here, these are some of my old filament rollers that I used. And this was actually one I designed initially for the universal 3D printer enclosure. And I like this design mainly because you could adjust it to any width of filament roller. So each time you change filament, you have to adjust these, which is good because it's compatible with pretty much any filament brand. But the issue with these is if you didn't have it perfectly square, or sometimes the filament would kind of get stuck in this crack. You can see there's little cracks there. Then it would tip over, and then sometimes your print would fail. And then this version is the version that Prusa actually sends with their Prusa mini printers. And the benefit to this is it stays more square than the other separate pieces that I showed you earlier, but each time again you have to adjust these to get them in position for different widths of filament rolls. So what I wanted to do was make one where you didn't have to adjust the filament rollers and that you could essentially just use and it would self-center. So that's when I came up with this design. And I'm gonna just take you through my thought process for this, and hopefully you find this useful. The files will be down in the description, and if you want it, be happy for you to print it off. So let's get started. So before we get too far in this video, I do want to mention that you have to purchase 4 608 bearings. We include these in our universal enclosure kit, and we'll also include 4 of these in our DELACK enclosure, which I'll mention some here in a couple minutes. But I wanted to just go ahead and warn you that you do need 4 608 bearings to complete this build. So hopefully you already have some of those, or you can purchase them on Amazon or somewhere else. I'll leave a link to these down in the description below, but just want to mention this before we get started. So I just wanted to briefly go through my thought process on creating this roller. As you can see, it's tapered so that the filament roll will kind of self-center. It doesn't matter what width roll you're using, it'll always kind of self-center itself so that you have the filament pretty consistently coming from the middle of the roller and doesn't start to get towards one side, and then that causes some of the filament rolls to fall. So the way I made this was I started with a sketch here, and you can see that I had this little arc to make the tapered portion, and then this was just the cutout for the bearing. And what I'm about to do after this is I'm just going to revolve it in a circle around, so we can see that here in this next step here. So I just took that profile and revolved it in a circle, and so then you get basically half the roller. And my thought process with making half of the roller was I knew that I could ultimately connect them if I needed to, so I could print them in 2 pieces and then join them together. And then that's what I did here, was I just did a mirror across that portion, and then just kind of stepped through. I created that impossible overhang that I mentioned in one of my previous videos. I'll link that up in the corner. But essentially what I did was make it a lot easier to bridge this portion of this part. If you imagine printing it this way, you're going to have to bridge some of this, and sometimes you can have some imperfections in the print if you don't do this little technique that I taught y'all how to do in a previous video. So if you're interested in that, check the video out. It's pretty useful if you do stuff like this occasionally. And then other thing that I did that was semi-important for the design is to try to add some friction. You can see here I made one little groove, and the way that I did that was I made a sketch of kind of in the mid plane if you're looking at it this way, and then I just projected the whole outside, which is this pinkish color. And then you can see here I extended just a straight line straight out from where that projected from on both sides. And that's important because I'm about to use this essentially called a pipe tool. Let's see here, the pipe, and I just selected that and then kind of extruded it along the path, and you can make the pipe whatever size you want, but essentially it's just a path operation. So did that, and I just made one, and I just made a pattern in a circle, which is what you see here, to make that nice symmetric pattern to give it some kind of groove so that the roller would rotate. So that is the roller portion. I made this hex dowel rod. As I mentioned, I did half and half, and the reason that the hex is nice is because it aligns everything. It doesn't allow this part to rotate, and it's really easy to print this because you have a nice flat surface. So that was another important feature that I made. And the reason I did that was, yes, I probably could print this whole piece in one piece, but sometimes if you try to print with this on the bed plate, so you'd be printing in this orientation, since it's a bigger piece up here, sometimes you have issues with bed adhesion, so this tends to fall over a little bit easier. So generally speaking, if you can print, with the larger part of the part on the print bed and then have this print in this direction, that's better overall. And I probably could combine them, but I like how this kind of reinforces everything. So I thought that was the best solution. So, and then as far as the full assembly, this is the roller as I just showed you. See, I can hide these real quick. And what I did here, I knew that I wanted to print these face down. So I print one half like this being the bed plate. So the bed plate is here. And then I print the other half the same way. So with the bed plate like that. And so I had to split this down the middle. So the big focus here was to make it look decent without having any type of non-3D printable part. So that's why I made this hexagon to kind of bond these two pieces together. But the only issue that I had there was it took a couple of attempts to finally figure out that I needed something going across to kind of connect these together. And that's where I came up with this little shaft dowel ride type solution. So what these do is basically join the two pieces so that this piece doesn't break in half down the center. So if you think about it, this hex is kind of pulling the two sides together, but there's nothing really preventing these from breaking like this way. So having this dowel solution gives it some support in this direction so that it doesn't break in half down the middle. And also added some little plugs that you'll notice as you print here that kind of snap everything into place. So overall, pretty happy with how this all turned out. This is the accessory parts, essentially all the parts except for the main two bodies. But this is the preferred print orientation. You can see here what I'm talking about with the hexagon shafts. It's easy to print this. It's not like a cylinder where you have to print in the other direction. This is stronger this way, which is what we want, because when you stick these in, the main force is going to be perpendicular to the ride. So this is the preferred orientation. And then since this is face down, if you have a textured print bed, which is the one I recommend, you get a nice texture on this hexagon, which makes it look pretty nice. And then these are the small little other dowels that I made, which are more cylinder shaped, but these tend to print pretty easily as well. And then at the bottom, you can see that impossible overhang thing that I was mentioning. And essentially the idea is to be able to tell the printer to go in one direction as it's trying to bridge this, instead of trying to do all of it in one, where it's basically trying to extrude this circle on thin air, which tends to not work out very well. So that's just this design. I wanted to briefly explain that. So that's the main part, and I'd suggest doing this one color and then doing these other bodies the other color. All right, and here are the two big body parts of the self-centering filament roller. You can see here, this is the preferred orientation. Again, made this design on the bottom. I'm going to also export the plain bottom, so if you want to do that, feel free, but I think it turns out pretty cool. And since it's rollers, I feel like this is kind of aesthetically pleasing, since these will be spinning, or the rollers will be spinning over here. And again, doesn't require support. You see here the little slots for where those dowels will insert. And I think that overall it should be fairly easy to print and hopefully turn out pretty well. So this is that part. So now I'm going to print it off and assemble it. Forgot to print the other set of these, so that's what I'm doing now, is just printing those real quickly. So also wanted to give y'all a sneak peek at our new enclosure here. Hopefully some of you might be interested in it. It's compatible with the Prusa Mini and the Prusa Mark III and Mark IV series, and a lot of different features that I'll be going through shortly in a video, probably to be posted in less than a week or so. I'll have actually a series on this about some of the design decisions I made, but really happy with how it turned out. And if you want to sign up, you'll get a discount code when we launch it to get a discount on it. And you can imagine some of the features that might be present if you just take a look around at everything here. And really, overall, I feel like it'll be a nice deal for someone who's looking for a pretty affordable enclosure for the Mark III, Mark IV, or Prusa Mini. And now let's get back to the filament holder. All right, so here are all the pieces laid out. I'm just gonna assemble everything. So the first thing I would recommend doing is to essentially add the hex here into this. So it should go in relatively easily. You might have to use a little bit of force, but try to design it where it didn't take too much effort. And then here we'll add another one. You wanna make sure that these are lined up. They should match up fairly well. Try just tap them into place. And you can see there that everything is all lined up. Nice and neat. And that's what I was talking about with the hexagon. You know, it keeps all these ridges in line with each other. So you can see there at the seam, they line up perfectly and they can't rotate because it's a hexagon, not a cylinder. So a lot of reasons to like the hexagon design. So now I'll just go ahead and do this with the other one. Fairly straightforward. And this is my first time doing a overhead assembly like this. So bear with me as I kind of hopefully get better with this over time. All right, so now just go ahead and add the bearings to each one. Insert little dowels into these little pieces here. And then I would just advise you to kind of just put it on just halfway really. And now the next step would be to add the bearings on both sides. All gotta come together at once. And then this piece, so you line your pins. Make sure you get them nice and tight. All right, and there we have it. So you can see they're nice and spinny. Overall went together well. And this is that design that I was talking about. I think it looks kind of interesting. Regardless of how wide or how narrow it is, since it is tapered in the middle, that it'll ultimately kind of self-center itself there in the middle. So hope that you like this and hope that you got something out of it, and hope that you'll consider subscribing. So thanks for watching.